The following recording is Montgomery County Emergency Communications, Montgomery County Emergency Communications, October 3rd, 2002.
Yeah, we need an ambulance at the corner of Knowles in Connecticut.
Okay.
Something blew up, or I have no idea. Montgomery County 911.
Yeah, some guy's been shot.
Blood's coming out of her nose and her mouth. Okay, is he still alive?
Blood's coming out of her nose and her mouth.
425.
Yes.
911 emergency.
Bring you up to date on what is going on.
5 people shot over the last 24 hours.
Random shootings. Police have no idea.
Got a shooting just occurred at 11.
Where?
What's the address?
We're going to be stretched here.
Hello?
The evening of October 2nd, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my wife having dinner, and I got a phone call from my deputy. There had been a shooting. I said, well, what do we have? Some sort of a robbery? He says, well, we really don't know right now.
Information about a white box
truck. The next
morning,
morning, we started getting these different reports.
Now we're outside the Mobile station where less than 4 hours ago, a man was shot and killed.
We had a shooting, and then we had another shooting.
5 fatalities, 5 different locations, and 5 bullets.
We had basically a public safety crisis in the Washington metropolitan area.
This woman was shot perhaps from all the way across the parking lot. They simply don't know.
Chief turned to me and said, basically, what the hell do we have?
Montgomery County Police Chief Charles Moose held a news conference. Here's some of what he had to say.
Our children are safe at this point.
That first morning, it was a matter of trying to figure out what do we got here and what's going on.
Whoever did this was not anywhere in sight.
This was the big spree the snipers became notorious for. A nightmare was unfolding in the middle of the suburbs on a beautiful October morning.
Behind me is a vacuum machine. And what happened here just before 10 o'clock this morning?
I heard this huge loud noise like a bomb. The guys at the gas
Loud noise like a bomb? Like a gunshot, maybe?
Kinda.
So we're at the Shell gas station where Lori Lewis Rivera was murdered. Lori had come to Washington from rural Idaho to work as a nanny. She was vacuuming her boss's minivan. The snipers were over my shoulder in the supermarket parking lot behind me, and they shot her once in the back, and she basically died right here on this spot.
And they have an all-points bulletin out for a white Isuzu or Mitsubishi type truck.
The white box truck concept was the biggest hindrance we had in this case. My personal role numerous times in press conferences was, you need to look and tell us everything you saw. Don't just look for a white box truck.
White vans all across this county that had been stopped.
It didn't work.
I have received a multitude of calls regarding white box trucks.
And after we caught Muhammad and Malvo, we found out from a lot of other people, they saw them. They saw this car, they didn't think things were right, but they weren't looking for an old blue Chevrolet.
It's an odd feeling to think that my money financed the whole operation, but shortly after they shot me, they bought the car that they used to kill people from. What happened was that on September 5th, 2002, I was leaving my restaurant, and as soon as I got in my car, I saw a flash of light to my left and the window, driver's side window exploded, and Malvo had shot me. He opened the back door of my car and grabbed my briefcase, and there was about $3,500, $3,600 inside the briefcase, and that's what they bought, whatever they needed, ammunition for the next month and a half.
Their method was they had an old broken down Chevrolet Caprice, and they had stolen a civilian version of an M16 rifle from a gun store in Tacoma, Washington. And they cut a hole in the trunk of the car so that you could stick the barrel of the rifle through the hole. They would select an area, someplace where there were stationary people who would be extremely vulnerable and extremely unsuspecting. And they would lie in wait for an easy target. And that was the thing that was really scary.
What brought a 42-year-old Army veteran together with a young boy that when he first met him was probably just about 15 years old when he had been abandoned by his mother down on the island of Antigua. How did John Muhammad program this young man into a killing machine?
Time, that's the only thing we possess. And where we invest it tells what we value. He gave me his time. He was consistent, even though the consistency was madness.
John Muhammad was a man of a great inflated ego. He had felt that he had not been treated fairly, largely because of his race, by the military, and so he left the military extremely disgruntled. Coupled with that, his wife Mildred had won a custody battle out in Washington State, and she had fled. She was terrified of John Muhammad, and I believe that as he traveled across the United States, he went to various locations looking for his wife.
This was probably the most difficult and the most stressful case that I've ever been involved with.
Let's go, folks, let's go!
It paralyzed an entire region.
When Iran Brown got shot, it brought the case to a whole other level.
I knew from that moment on the scope of this was going to change.
That becomes my most terrible moment.
But stepping over the line, shooting a kid.
When he got shot on his way into school, just really personally felt like I failed, couldn't keep anybody safe.
The tips that broke the case were the phone call we got from the West Coast that Muhammad and Malvo had been shooting a gun that was similar to this, and they were missing. And then we found out a car had been purchased by John Muhammad.
And I had just laid my head down when I got a phone call from one of my sergeants. And he says, somebody spotted him up in a truck stop up in Myersville. We got him.
Our biggest concern is that they had been monitoring the media and would know that we were looking for him, but turns out they were just asleep like a couple of babes in the woods.
That time waiting for the SWAT team to execute the arrest was quite nerve-wracking. And they said they have him. And I came in, and it was a pretty crowded crime scene. There were a lot of us there. You know, they created a great deal of havoc, but there was no fight in them at that particular point.
And we only wish we could have stopped this to reduce the number of victims.
I mean, I've never seen so many media people crying. It's tough for us to stand up there in front of all of them, too.
The killing ended. Amen.
The quote is, it's the guy.
There was a treasure trove of information that came out of the car they were arrested in. I mean, the murder weapon itself was obtained. There were earplugs. There were walkie-talkies. There were gloves. John Muhammad got a death sentence. Lee Boyd Malvo, he got a sentence of life without the possibility of parole, but not a death sentence.
All I can say is you watch the news every night, and in an instant, you're that guy. You were shot by that guy. How did that happen to me? How did I get to be on the news? You know, how did I get to be that person? It's a crazy feeling.
I went up to Paul and I just told him again, I just wish we would have handled it differently, handled it better. And, you know, and Paul just told me, he said, look, I'm alive and I'm well. You caught them before they shot 50 people. And, you know, and I'm very happy about that. And you should be very proud of that.
He said, the last thing he said to me was, man, I wish we could have solved it earlier, which was interesting. I said, yeah, I do too. But I said, look at it the positive way. You solved it on a certain date, and if it took you 2 weeks longer, maybe 20 more people would be dead.
And that was very refreshing, and I guess I needed that.
When people say they're having a bad day, they really don't know what a bad day is. I had a bad day September 5th. If you have a bad day because your boss yelled at you, you know, it's nothing. It's nothing. Life is still better than anything that happens in life. You know, just waking up in the morning is literally a good day.
1042 John 22 1807.
400, only 10-5.
10-4, car 400, 1808.
5-4 stage, you want a minute? Stage, come on in. 2 John 4, 29, 91, 13.
10-4, 2 John 4, 1809. 10-4, 2 John 10, 1809. Car 2 King 3. 2 King 3. No response. 2 John Sam 1. PIC just occurred. Georgia Avenue and Pliers Mill Road. Comes through fire and rescue. Response code 3. 10-4, 1810.
2 John 3.
2 John 3.